All right, we're going to look at circles today. We want you to be able to graph the equation of the circle, write the equation of the circle, identify what the radius and center would be, and show that it would be an equation for a circle. All right, so circle is a set of points whose distance from the center is the radius. And so if you got a circle and HK, whatever those numbers might be, is the center, and r is your radius, the equation for the circle is a set of points who all have the same distance from the center. And so this equation is a spin-off of that distance formula equation you saw previously, because if we were to square root both sides here, this left side looks like that distance formula where you'd have all the points the same radius away. And so you got x minus whatever that center is squared, y minus whatever that y part of that center is squared, equals our radius squared is the equation of a circle. If that center ends up being at the origin, then our equation simplifies a little bit because it would be x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared equals our radius squared. Well, if you got minus 0, that's not changing anything, so this would just simplify to x squared plus y squared equals radius squared. So if your center is 0, 0, then your equation becomes a little bit easier. All right, so in this example, they want us to graph out this circle. You can see nothing's being subtracted from the x or y. That tells us our center is going to be 0, 0 on this one. So we know we can put a dot there for the center. This number here, that's our radius squared equals 16. That means if we square root both sides, that our radius is going to be 4. So our radius is 4. When graphing that then, you know 4 points you can get for sure on here. You can go 4 right, 4 left, 4 up, 4 down, and get those points. And then do your best to kind of connect them into a circle here. The other points are a little bit harder to get, but do your best. All right, next example, graph this one. So now we're getting a little bit more complicated. Our center is not 0, 0 on this one. Our center is going to be the numbers that are being subtracted from the x here. So our center, on the first one, what's being subtracted from x here is 2. The second one you got to be a little bit more careful on now. What number is being subtracted from the y here? That would be kind of like you're thinking y minus a negative 4 is being squared there. And so the center point is going to be 2, negative 4. Another way to think about it is what numbers make both of these 0? If you put 2 in here, 2 minus 2 is 0. If you put negative 4 in here, negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So the numbers that make that 0, that's the center of the circle. So over here now, we know that 2, negative 4, that's our center. Next, we got to figure out our radius. So our radius here, squared equals 25. That tells us our radius is 5 if we take the square root. So now you want to go, again, 5 up, left and right and down from this. So there's a point there, point there, point there, and point here. And then again, connect them as best as you can here into a circle. Example 3, write the equation of a circle with these things. So here they tell us the center and radius. They want us to write the equation. Again, you got to know equation that we had before looks like this. So if we plug in our center points in for these, we're putting that there, and our radius there, and we should be able to write out the equation. So it'd be x minus 4 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 3 squared. And then if we square that, the last number, we know 3 squared would end up being 9, and so we can just change that to 9. B, center at the origin, radius is 10. So if it's origin, remember we're just minusing 0, so it'll just end up being x squared plus y squared equals 10 squared, which is 100. All right, let's have you pause the video and try C out, see what you get. All right, if you did this one correctly here, you got x minus negative 3 squared, y minus 1 squared equals 2 squared. Should simplify that. Minus and negative is the same as plus here. So 3x plus 3 squared, y minus 1 squared equals 4 would probably be how you'd see it on a test. All right, next example, find the equation of the circle with the endpoints of a diameter being at these two locations. All right, now we're getting a little bit more complicated here. So let's start by graphing out those 2 points, negative 2, 4, 1, 2. It's right here. 610. Right there. Okay, so we got P and Q. Those are the end points of a diameter. Remember diameter, that's all the way through a circle. So there's some circle here that goes through these 2 points where those 2 points are opposite each other on a diameter. We got to figure out from that what's the center and what's the radius. The one we're going to want to find first here is the center. The center of that circle should be halfway between the 2 points we had. So halfway between here and halfway between here. Good thing for us, we've done that before. That's just finding the midpoint. So what we got to start out doing here is figuring out what's the midpoint of the line PQ here. So to do that, remember you kind of average the x's and average the y's. So if we average our 2 x's, negative 4 and 6. So if we're averaging 2 things, divide by 2, then average the y's as well. And we can find the middle. So the middle here, if we add those up, it's 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 4 plus 10 is 14. Divided by 2 is 7. So the point 27 over here should be our center. So that's the center. Okay. We also need the radius. So our radius, in order to find that, is the distance from that center point out here. So it's the distance anywhere we would go here. Now, going straight left and right doesn't work the best here because we don't know exactly where those might cross. But we know that this distance and this distance, we know those 2 points, or you could use that other point too, but that's our radius there. So what we want to do is find what's the distance between our center and either P or Q. I'm going to use Q. So what we've got to find is what is the length of our center to Q? What's the length of that line going to be? You can do that with distance formula. You could do quadratic or Pythagorean theorem, which I'm going to do here. Figure out what's a squared plus b squared equals c squared look like. That's 3 up and 4 over. So we're going to get that we got 3 squared plus 4 squared equals our radius squared. Squaring both of those and adding up, that's 25. And so if we take the square root, our radius is 5 here. So that's our radius. Now the last thing, find the equation, is what they asked us to do in this problem. So to finish now, find the equation of that circle. If we got the center, we got the radius, we just got to put that together now. The equation would be x minus 2 squared plus y minus 7 squared equals our radius squared. So 5 squared would be 25. So there's our equation there. Let's try another one. Find the equation of the circle with the center at negative 2, 4, tangent to the x-axis. Let's talk about this word tangent. tangent means that it hits at one spot only. It just kind of skims it. So if we were to look at this problem here, on a graph, we got -2, 4. There's our center. We're going to have this circle that touches the x-axis at just one point. So the bottom of that circle's got to be right there, and it just kind of, this circle's going to just skim that x-axis right at that point. Well, that tells us something about our graph then. If we know this is the center, that's got to be our radius there. And we can just count the number of spots here. 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So our radius then has to be 4. So if we know that's the center and our radius is 4, we should be able to come up with the equation on this one. Radius is 4, so radius squared in the equation. So our final equation, doing some simplifying, minus and negative is the same as plus. And this would equal 16. So there's the equation of that circle. Next one, C here. Find the equation of the circle, center at the origin, radius 10. Should be pretty simple on this one. If it's origin, we know it's 0, 0. So it's just going to be x squared plus y squared equals our radius squared. 10 squared is 100. Next one, number 5. Show that this equation represents a circle and find the radius and center. Okay, so this one getting a little bit harder now. They do provide us a hint here. We want to get it in this equation of a circle where we got these things. So what we have to do on a problem like this is if we start getting more stuff, we're going to group together the x's and y's to try to get those the same. So I'm going to group together my 2x stuff. So we got x squared plus 4x. I'm also going to group together my y stuff. So y squared minus 8y. And then my last number here, that 12, I'm going to move that one to the other side. So I'm going to subtract it over. So this is now equal to negative 12. All right. So next thing I want to do, I'm going to try to group together now and come up with a way to get these into perfect squares. That's why we did that, completing the square unit before, so you'd have an idea of what to do when you get to these ones. So what we're going to do now is complete the square on each of these individually. We're going to start with our x's over here. So in order to complete the square, I'm going to take this middle number 4. I'm going to take half of it and square it and see what that ends up being. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. So to complete this square, I want to add 4 here. But that also means I need to add 4 over on the other side. Next, I'm going to do the same thing now with this one. I'm going to take this number, negative 8, take half of it, and square it. So half of that's negative 4. Negative 4 squared is 16. So like I did before, I'm going to add 16 here. And that means I also need to add 16 to that other side. So now we've completed the square on both of these. Both of these should now factor. So like this first one factors to x plus 2 times x plus 2, or another way of writing that is x plus 2 squared. That's now starting to look like what we want up here. Let's do the same thing on the next one now. This would factor into x minus 4 times y minus 4. And then another way to write that is y minus 4 squared. On the right side now, combine all those terms together. And if we do that, we get 8. So now we should be able to locate what the center and radius of this circle are, because that's what they had asked for originally, find the radius and center. So we can write those two things out knowing this equation out. The center of this would be whatever makes both of these 0. So -2 and 4 are the two numbers that would make both of those 0. That's our center. Our radius is going to be whatever we get when we put r squared equal to that number, which means our radius here is going to be the square root of 8. So our radius would be square root of 8. I think there is a perfect square in there of 4, so it would be 2 square roots of 2. So our radius is 2 square roots of 2. So there's our center and radius. Next example. So this one's along the same lines of the one we just did. We're going to, again, group together things that are the same. So I'm going to start, I'm going to group together my x stuff. So I got 2x squared minus 5x. I'm going to group together my y stuff. Looks like there's only one thing with y here. And then equals anything left over. And looks like on this one it's just 0. Okay, now a difference between this problem is we got those 2's there. I'd rather not have those 2's in front of both the x and y. So I'm going to go through and divide by 2 to get rid of those. But that means I also have to divide this other stuff by 2 as well. So now what my equation looks like is x squared minus 5 halves x. Over here, this is plus y squared equals 0 divided by anything, still just 0. All right, now complete the square. Luckily for us, we don't have to do anything with the y's on this one, but we do got to complete the square on our x term over there. So we want to take our x, -5 halves, divide that by 2, and square it. If we're dividing something by 2, another way of writing that is to multiply by the reciprocal. So let's take -5 halves and multiply by the reciprocal of 2, or 1/2. So that means we got -5/4 squared, which would be, if we square both top and bottom, 25/16. And it'd be positive because we're multiplying two -5/4 together to get that. So that's our number here that's going to complete the square. So we're going to add in 25/4 here. Or sorry, not 25/4, 25/16. But that also means we got to add 25/16 to the other side. All right, let's complete our square now. So the one on the left here is going to factor to x minus 5/4 times another x minus 5/4. And the reason I knew that right away is that's the number being squared over here. So another way of writing that's going to end up being x minus 5/4 squared plus our y squared here equals 25/16. So there's our equation. This is the equation of the circle. Now we want to write what's the radius and what's the center. Let's start with the center. The center on this one is whatever makes these 0 here, so +5/4 for the x. And nothing's being subtracted from the y, so 0. So that's the center. The radius, okay, this is our radius squared here is 25/16. So if we take the square root of that, square root of the top is 5, square root of the bottom is 4, so our radius is 5/4. So there's our center and radius. All right, last one, kind of again similar to what we've had. Once you pause the video, try this one, see what you come up with. All right, again, we got to group together our x stuff, group together our y stuff, and then equals 0 here. Looks like on this one, hopefully you divided everything here by 4 to make this easier. That makes our equation now x squared plus 2x here we go, y squared. This divided by 4, there's kind of like a 1 here, so this is going to be minus 1/4 y equals still 0, because 0 divided by 4 is still 0. All right, now we got to complete the square here. So with the x, take half of that number and square it. That's 1 squared, or 1. So we want to add 1 there, but that means we got to add 1 to the other side. With our y, we got negative 1/4, half of that squared. That's like multiplying by the reciprocal, so it's like negative 1/4 times a half squared. That's going to be negative 1/8 squared, which is going to be 1/64. So to complete this one, we need 1/64. Got to add that to the other side too. All right, so now let's do our factoring here. This should be x plus 1 times another x plus 1, which is x plus 1 squared. The next one, what's going to times the negative 1/64 and add the negative 4th? Again, clues right over here. It's going to be y minus an eighth and y minus an eighth, because negative 1/8 times negative 1/8 is 1/64. If you add those, you get negative 1/4. So this is going to be y minus an eighth squared equals, now we got to add up those terms on the right side. 1 plus 64, we need a common denominator. 1 we can think of as 64/64 plus 1/64 is 65/64. All right, so now that's the equation of this circle. Last step, they wanted to list out the radius and center. Center here should be at negative 1/8. Remember, it's what makes those 0. Negative 1 plus 1 is 0. 1/8 minus 1/8 is 0. Our radius is means we got r squared here equal to 65/64. That means we got square root here. The bottom number we can square root, that would be 8. The top one's not a perfect square, but we'll just leave it then as square root of 65. So radius is square root of 65/8. There's our center and radius. So hopefully that came out for you.